Hello, friends. Thanks for tuning in to another episode. Today, me and my friend Dédalo go over our top 5 favorite shows of all time. Over on his podcast, Hey Dédalo, we go over our top 5 favorite films of all time. So definitely check out his podcast, Hey Dédalo, available across all platforms. Also, follow him on Instagram and Twitter at Hey Dédalo, and also follow him on YouTube at Hey Dédalo. So, I'll be right back after this quick break. Sorry, I'm whispering in your ear. Tell me something that you'd like to hear. Alright, I gotta go. Bye. Hello.
Hey, Matt. How's it going?
Good. How are you? How's your day going so far?
Oh, I'm doing wonderful now that I'm talking to you, brother. How you doing?
Good. Just a lovely day of working, and now I'm home, relaxed.
Good.
Yeah, and ready to go over this list with you.
Absolutely. I'm super excited. It was so fun to put it together.
Yeah, was it easy for you? Was this one easy?
You know what? It was easy. I took the approach of basically putting a list together of stuff that was like TV shows off the top of my head, and then looking at like what were the best shows of all time and seeing if there were any off.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, it just came super easy. I think the harder part was narrowing it down.
Did you take the same approach did you like the entire series rather than a few seasons?
Yeah, I had kind of a rule that I made because there's a couple of shows that I really love, but they either didn't end well or they kind of sucked towards the end of the seasons, like halfway through the seasons they started sucking. And also, I didn't want any shows that were like too short, like didn't last long enough.
Got you. And so there's no criteria to this list, right? Rather, like they could still be actually going on. Like they don't have to be completed yet, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, I believe I know one of my shows is still going on at least. Actually, two of them.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Yep.
Well, I should let my listeners know over on your podcast, Hey Dédalo, we did our personal top 5 favorite films of all time. And this one is our top 5 favorite TV shows, or shows at least. And so, since you started off last time, how about I go ahead and start off this time?
All right. Yeah, I'm the show expert. When I was a kid, I lived out in the country, so if I wasn't outside with the animals, I was inside watching TV.
Well, yeah, and I mean, me too, but to some degree, yeah, it's insane the amount of shows that I didn't ever get to see old shows like, well, actually that's a lie. I grew up watching The Golden Girls with my grandma. And so that was probably one of the oldest shows I would watch, I would say. But then, of course, like Courage the Cowardly Dog and SpongeBob and all of that. But my number 5, starting off, is Better Call Saul. Have you seen it?
Oh, I have. Yeah, spinoff, right?
Yeah, spinoff of Breaking Bad, which is another great show. But personally, I like this one a bit more than Breaking Bad.
Interesting. That's cool that a spin-off show can make a top 5 of all time list. That's like really impressive.
And it's still going on, so I don't know how it's going to end. But yeah, I just find myself, the character Saul Goodman or Jimmy McGill, as he goes by, I suppose, both. Yeah, it's just a great character, in my opinion, as a corrupt lawyer, the ability to just kick ass in terms of legally. Yeah, and it's like I grew up watching Judge Joe Brown and like Judge Judy and shit like that. My mom would always be watching that and Jerry Springer, so it's kind of like a show mixing the two to some degree in an interesting way. So it's fun. So I'm curious.
That's a show that when I saw Saul on Breaking Bad, it was like one of those characters that's on a show. I mean, it makes sense that they would spin off his character because every time he was on Breaking Bad, it was like a cool scene. Like it was like funny, it was comedic. He has a really great way as an actor, and it's interesting that he's been able to carry that show because if it's still on, that means it's been on for like what, 4 years or 5 years now?
I think it's in its fifth season at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, fifth season. So, and I mean, it's just only getting better. It was a bit slow in the beginning. Breaking Bad had a very quick pace to it. But Better Call Saul, it's like a simmer. You know, it's like a slow.
Hmm.
You know, like crock pots always cook better. Shoot, the slow cook. You know, that meat's a
Yeah.
lot more tender. So, so I'm
Yeah.
curious.
And
What did you think of A Better Call Saul, or what are you thinking of it so far? If you're still actively watching.
you, I haven't watched a whole lot of it, but the few episodes that I did watch, I'm not much of a spin-off show person, so it's
I
hard.
see.
The only spin-off show I think I got into was Frasier. That's a
Ah,
spin-off of Cheers, but I don't watch a lot of TV nowadays, and that'll reflect in my list for sure. But the Better Call Saul, I mean, I love it. I loved the show when I did watch it, and I loved Saul when he was on Breaking Bad. I thought his character was super interesting and funny and made sense. You know, the whole sleazy lawyer thing. But
yeah.
I'm sure that the show itself goes more in depth into his character. You know, now that he has his own thing going on. Um, and I think there's a couple of people that were from Breaking Bad that have been on his show too, right?
Yeah. So like Jonathan, for example, I think that's the
Hmm.
character's name. What's so interesting is that it's not just, I don't know how far you've gotten into the seasons, but we get back into, Los Pollos Hermanos, that guy.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. If you remember, I think it was in Breaking Bad when he got, killed by the explosion in the nursing home.
yeah.
Yeah. Great scene. Um, yeah. So he comes back in this season and we see kind of the development of his business in a way.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And so
Yeah, it
it's,
was that was a really iconic scene in Breaking Bad.
phew, hell yeah.
That guy from that, and it was a cool like thing that it kind of made it like this guy's running like a franchise, and he's like running drugs out the back of it.
Well, as a character too, what an exit, to be able to like not just die, but to die that way, to be able to walk out, and half your face is missing. That's a great exit for a
Oh
character to
yeah.
have.
Oh yeah, and for the actor, that's a good payday to be able to have a show that's
Shoot.
going to continue.
Heck yeah.
It's like your character wasn't over, you get a reboot. So
Well,
that's pretty awesome.
what's even greater that, most people, yeah, think about that, but as a director, whoever filmed or was the director of the pilot episode, they get royalties for every episode for the rest of the series, for the rest of the show, no matter if they're on it or
Wow.
not. Yeah, just because they were part of the pilot.
Damn.
Yeah.
That's
So,
awesome.
hell yeah, it is. So what's your number five?
All right, my number five. Back in the '80s, a lot of shows premiered that were like family oriented,
Mm.
and I noticed that there was this transition from the '80s to the '90s where it was like super family oriented shows that kind of stayed to that. And then in the '90s, you got family oriented shows that kind of went off their rocker a little bit or had like different
Ah,
things going on.
don't say it's the Cosby Show. Don't say Cosby Show.
No, no, no way. No, 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 no. It wouldn't have made my top five list if he wasn't a rapist. It's still definitely not making my top five list.
Okay. Not to
When
be.
we get
It was my number seven. To be honest. No, I'm kidding.
um Family Matters. Did you ever watch that?
Mm, that was I have. That was
Yeah.
with did it have Steve
Yep.
Urkel? Yeah, that's
Yeah.
his name, right?
Steve Urkel. Did I
Mm.
do that? Yeah, Steve Urkel. And it was that actually Steve's story of his name in real life is Jaleel White. But his story of getting on that show and basically making the show what it became,
Mm.
he was on the first episode and he was supposed to play like a nerd that was interested in Carl Winslow, who is the father of the family. His character, he was in love with his daughter.
Oh, okay. I thought this was going on somewhere else. Okay.
And so the first episode is like Carl accidentally tries to set up a date between Laura and Steve for the dance. And then Steve comes and he's a mega nerd. But
Oh,
he wasn't supposed to be on the show past that. And the audience reacted so well to his character that the people that were making the show were like, we got to have this guy on as a full-time character. And then he became the character.
Wow.
And, you know, I love the show because, you know, it talked about a lot of issues and things that, you know, the show's called Family Matters,
Yeah.
but it talked a lot about, you know, things that we could relate to, but it also had a very like experiential side, like, you know, with Steve being into science and, you know, doing experiments and being a goofball and screwing things up. And I mean, there's so many episodes where him and Carl Winslow get into like big old fights, or he screws up, he breaks something in Carl's house or breaks his car or whatever.
Did I do
And
that? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And you know, just I love the show about an African American family. I think it was set in Chicago, and
Hmm.
Carl was a cop in a working class family, and it tackled real issues from race to relationships, and was a legit comedy as well. It premiered in 1989, and it ran for 9 seasons. And so for me, you know, I was 5 years old when it premiered, and I was 14 when it finished. So you know, it played a large role in my childhood.
It is. It's one of those shows I remember seeing. I think just reruns on TV.
Right.
Um, you know, I would be scrolling through. I'd be seeing that. I'd be seeing Three's Company. I'd be seeing Fresh Prince of Bel Air. You know, pretty much. I mean,
Absolutely. Well, and it's, yeah, like you said, there, you know, Three's Company I loved Three's Company, super popular show, but there was a ton of family shows. There was Full House, Boy Meets World, Step by Step. I mean, I remember Family Matters used to be a part of TGIF on ABC. You know, it was Thank Goodness It's Friday. So from 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock, you got these four shows. And, you know, on Fridays, I mean, when you're a kid, you're not really going out, at least in my
yeah.
case. I wasn't. So you're sitting down and you're like watching these shows, the brand new episodes. And so, you know, this was pre-internet, you know, being as popular as it is today. So you did watch TV, and you did, if there was a new show on, you set your timer to get your butt down and watch the show, you know.
And usually as a family, you know, after
Yeah.
dinner or during dinner, they had TV dinners and all that. So,
Yeah, exactly.
um, yeah. So great show, though. I don't remember. I mean, it's not like I've seen. Have you seen the entire series of it? Not
I
just
seen
episode?
I've seen most of it for sure, and it, like yourself, I saw a ton of reruns because after the show ended, I mean, it was still being shown for years and years afterwards. Like a lot of great shows, they get picked up and shown on other networks for many years.
My number four, and I wonder if you'd have seen this, is stars Billy Bob Thornton. It's
Wow,
Goliath.
wow! When you said Billy Bob Thornton, I was like, "What show is that?" I have never heard of Goliath.
No, so it's another show that's still going on. It's still currently running. Um, so there's 3 seasons out so far. So it's a good premise. Similar to its name, it's kind of about a kind of a uh, small, I guess, individual taking on a large firm or a large conspiracy or some kind of. Um, just each series or each season is different. It's great. This most recent series,
What's the show about?
a disgraced lawyer, now an ambulance chaser, gets a case that could bring him redemption or at least revenge on the firm which expelled him. So one of the reasons I actually really love this show is that it's unpredictable. Um,
Hmm.
you know, one of my favorite aspects of a show is like, for example, when every episode has the same kind of shock value as a season finale episode, you know, to where something so drastic happens that it shifts dramatically the narrative, and
Right.
it just makes you feel like, oh my god, like they're gonna, as we're so accustomed to when we see something like that, you know, we got to wait until, you know, a break and then we'll get the rest of the story basically. But yeah, this series, man, it's great. So like the first season, he's taking on kind of a law firm, but this most recent season, season 3, um, They say it takes place in Central Valley, but I mean, we're from there, but it definitely does not look like that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
well, yeah, even the first episode, the first season, I mean, takes place in Van Nuys, like in the valley here
Hmm.
where I'm at, and
Okay.
yeah, so it's kind of like an LA show,
I was gonna
but
say, if it's about Central Valley, are they like, this dirt is polluted, this air is polluted?
well, it's
I'm here to save these people.
they're actually in the third season they're going. He's fighting somebody who's like trying to hoard all the water,
Oh,
basically, who's trying to control the water,
oh,
and it's
that
about
makes sense.
farming and stuff. Yeah,
Hmm.
agriculture. So great show. It's a legal drama, so just like Better Call Saul, it's a legal show.
Yeah, two
Um,
lawyer shows in
two
a
lawyer
row.
shows, yeah. So
Yeah.
something about that.
You know, now that when you said when you were reading off the description, I do remember watching the trailer now.
Hmm.
I've seen the trailer, but where is it streaming off of? Like
Yeah,
what service?
it's streaming off of Amazon Prime Video.
Yes. So I seen the trailer to it through my Prime account. I remember now. And it looked interesting.
Yeah, and
I gotta check it out.
you should. Yeah, it's really good. I just canceled my Amazon Prime membership because I'm not a student anymore, so I can't get it for too cheap.
Hmm.
But yeah, so I don't get to watch it anymore. But it's a great show. I really, really, really highly recommend it.
Cool.
Yeah. So you've only seen the trailer. You haven't seen any episodes of it. What do you think
I
about
haven't
Billy Bob Thornton?
the person or the actor? Because there's kind of a distinction. I mean, I don't know the guy, but I've heard stories. But
That's
the
true.
actor, I mean, I think there's, for me, I think there's actors that kind of play like a role, and they're like, I guess you would say that like typecast. You know, in Billy Bob's case, he's always kind of the tough guy. I think maybe the only movie that he's not that way that I know of is like Sling Blade. Um,
Ah,
but
okay.
I really, and he's cool and everything, and I enjoy when I do see him in a movie. I do enjoy it, but he's not a guy that moves the needle for me when I'm like thinking of actors or people
Sure.
that are really just well rounded in everything they do and how they play their parts. But the solid guy, definitely a guy that when he's in a movie, your ears perk up because you know the name.
Yeah. To be fair, I don't have many. I haven't seen too many films that he's in or shows that he's in, for example. But I've seen Bad Santa. I suppose that was my introduction to him.
Hmm.
But when I did see this show, I instantly was like, this character was really made for him.
Hmm.
And I mean, it even has his name. His name in the show is Billy McBride.
Oh,
Yeah, and
interesting.
I mean, he's an alcoholic in the show. So on the about section here on Google, it says once a powerful lawyer, Billy McBride is now a washed up ambulance chaser who spends more time in bars than the courtroom. When Billy reluctantly agrees to pursue a wrongful death lawsuit against the massive law firm he helped create, a vast and deadly conspiracy comes to light. Billy and his team end up in a life or death trial against the ultimate foe, which could end up helping Billy find redemption and exact revenge on the firm. And it was created by David E. Kelly and Jonathan Shapiro. I don't know if those are
Okay.
any.
David E. Kelly sounds familiar. Um, but a lot of these guys that make these shows are like related too. I noticed like there's all these like families that like conglomerate and make shows together, or the
Mm.
kids start making shows now. But yeah, I definitely got to check that out for sure.
Oh, you know what? So I looked up David E. Kelly. He is a American television writer and former attorney. And so that definitely
Ah,
helps. Yeah, because this show, like he just spits out lawyer facts. You know what I mean? And I love
hmm.
hearing shit like that.
Oh yeah.
It's unique.
It kind of reminds you of like ER, that old show that they had to talk all the jargon and stuff like that.
Mm, yeah. So
Cool.
what is your número cuatro?
Número cuatro. It is a show, so I'm gonna kind of sell it a little bit. It's a unique show. It's kind of a bit of a reality show. It's not a full blown reality show, but there's a lot of reality in it. And it ran for 25 seasons.
Oh
Premiered
wow.
in 1988. And I love this show because nowadays we watch shows that are streaming, or
Uh-huh.
we can watch the show when we want to watch it. We have it DVR'd or it's streaming, or you go to YouTube and you pull something up.
Hmm.
But this show, when it used to come on, man, everyone was watching this show, and it was an interactive show because you could call in.
Oh wow.
America's Most Wanted
Oh, it was
with John
interactive.
Walsh. Yeah, you could call in. Oh, I mean, interactive in the sense that if you thought you knew who was the
Oh,
murderer,
you
you
can give
could
a
call
tip.
in. Yeah, you could go call the tip line, or
Get that cash money.
right. And I love the show. I think John Walsh made the show. He was the show because
Well,
the
his son,
guy.
right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
He was great on TV, but he was so passionate about catching criminals because his son was kidnapped and murdered, and murdered brutally.
Damn.
And so I didn't really know that when I started watching the show, because by the time I was watching, I was a kid myself. But as I got older and I found out, John Walsh's background, I mean, it made so much sense why he sold it. So like he was so passionate about people like giving tips and catching these guys, and they caught like, I mean, I remember when the show used to start, they would have like the countdown of like criminals they've caught, and it might have got into the thousands by the time the show was over. But they caught a grip of
Who do
people.
you think's a better person, him or Chris Hansen?
John Walsh. John Walsh. I mean, Chris Hansen. Chris Hansen.
What an interesting
I mean,
question, right?
why don't you have a seat, sir? Why don't you take a seat?
Yeah, offer some
Like,
pizza. Yeah, pretty much.
you know, Chris Hansen. I mean, To Catch a Predator was groundbreaking and a super necessary, super good show to catch those fuckers that were doing the things that they were doing. But for me, in terms of impact, in terms of like longevity, because I don't know how long To Catch a Predator has been on. It might still have a show on cable, or because I've heard that there's still some stuff going on. But America's Most Wanted to me was like to my knowledge, it was the first one. It was the first show. Like, it broke a lot of
Mm.
barriers because you're talking about reality situations. It's transcending the news. It's like an entertainment show that is the news. And before, you would have to wait till 10 o'clock at night or 11 o'clock at night to find out what was going on or what kind of crimes were being committed, and usually that was locally. This show was like shining a light on people that not only did they commit horrific crimes, but they were on the lam, they were on the loose, and we need your help to catch these motherfuckers.
Wow.
And so it was men, it was women, it was, couples, it was, grandpas and grannies running away from the law. It was, all these different sets of circumstances, and everyone at the, I don't have the ratings on hand, but I venture to guess at its most popular, America's Most Wanted had millions and millions of people watching it live, on a Friday night, to just, pay attention. And so for me, it definitely played a role in my childhood. It was interesting, and it's something that was like kind of a pioneering show.
Yeah. I remember seeing that show and Unsolved Mysteries. It's kind of around the same time period, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. And Unsolved Mysteries was one of the shows that probably made my top like 30 list.
for sure.
Like it was on the paper, but I couldn't get it, whittle it down. But that was a great show with a great entrance or theme
Oh, it
song. Oh
was
my God.
terrifying.
It's to scare the shit out of me when I was a kid.
What song terrified me was I think it was the beginning of the X-Files.
Yeah, the
Oh
X-Files.
man, I never watched the show.
Yeah.
It just terrified me as a kid.
You know
That
what?
sound.
I'm gonna have to agree that I avoided that show for a while, because if I was home alone, I couldn't watch stuff like that. Like, I couldn't watch the X-Files and be alone and like not have every single light in the house on.
Because you would be convinced you were about to be abducted, right?
Something was gonna go
Yeah,
down if I
something.
watched it. It was like, I'd rather watch like a family, like Family Matters or whatever. But I watched a lot of comedies when I was alone, but there was no way in hell I was watching Unsolved Mysteries,
Man.
or what's the show we were just talking about? Unsolved Mysteries or X Files. No freaking way I was watching that alone.
Yeah, there's no way. Especially that just gets the mind going. Those ones, the imagination's going. So my number three, and so for shows that I'm adding to, there's a lot of mini series that I didn't feel like I could add in there, but will definitely
Right.
be fitting in this spot. But
Mm-hmm.
I'll just mention them before we name our number ones. But my number three is a show that is streamable on Netflix, and I think you might have seen it, and that's Mindhunter.
Yes, great show.
Yes, so that's my number three.
Sneaky good show. I'm glad
Oh,
you brought that one up.
it's so great. Yeah, and so not lawyer, but FBI agents, I suppose. So the show, for those that don't know, that live under a freaking rock, no, it's about its logline here is catching a criminal often requires the authorities to get inside the villain's mind to figure out how he thinks. That's the job of FBI agents Holden, Ford, and Bill Tench, or Tenk. Uh, However the hell you say that. They attempt to understand and catch serial killers by studying their damaged psyches. Along the way, the agents pioneer the development of modern serial killer profiling. The crime drama has a strong pedigree behind the camera with Oscar-nominated director David Fincher and Oscar-winning actress Charlize Theron among the show's executive producers.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and so it's streamable on Netflix. There's 2 seasons. Um, so word out on, I guess, news about this. January 16th, 2020 was when this article was released saying Netflix hasn't confirmed Mindhunter Season 3 yet, but director David Fincher had at one point reported he had plans for a total of 5 seasons. But, however, David is currently tied up with other projects, so for now, the Mindhunter actors have been released from their contracts.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so it's not canceled necessarily, but uh, schedule conflicts are keeping it from, you know, keeping them from being filmed. And I mean, with this whole thing going on now, the whole industry is kind of shut down, so that's just even going to prolong
Yeah.
it even more.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good point. It would be a bummer if that show was shut down early because it's a really good show. And I didn't see the second season, but I did watch the first season and I was just so impressed because full disclosure, like in another life, I would have been like a detective. I
I
love
thought you were going to say the serial
love
killer.
no, I would not. Only in this
This
life, not
lifetime.
another
Yeah,
life.
that's this one.
On America's Most Wanted, Dédalo.
Dédalo.
He was on a podcast and admitted to killing others. No. But whatchamacallit, loved the show. It was really great. I'm a sucker for those stories. Serial killers have always been intriguing, and it's kind of sad that they're intriguing because the motherfuckers are killing people. But
They're smart.
serial killers, they captivate our imagination, and we wonder, what compels someone to do that. And the reason that we wonder those things even more today is because of people like the agents in the FBI who started doing forensic psychology and going and talking to these people and finding out their
Yeah.
motivations and
Who
what
started
was it in
asking the
their
questions, basically.
yeah, what is it in their childhoods that led them to this, or what was it in their backgrounds, and so that way they could actually make legitimate profiles to capture these the future ones. And movies like Silence of the Lambs, and there is a movie that was, you're familiar with the movie Red Dragon, right?
Let me see. Red
Yeah.
Dragon.
Yeah, that's a prequel to Silence of the Lambs,
Oh.
but it was originally made in the 80s, and it was also by the name Mindhunter.
Oh,
But
wow.
I don't think associated with the show that you're talking about, but it had the same name as a film. And so there's so much intrigue and interest in it. Whenever you talk to people, it's like, it's a taboo subject, and people do and enjoy going there. And actually, maybe someday we can sit down and talk about our top 5 serial killer. But the show Mindhunter, I mean, I haven't seen all of them, but I definitely recommend anyone who's listening to this that hasn't seen it, get your butt in gear and, enjoy your quarantine and watch Mindhunter for sure.
Definitely. Yeah, Mindhunter is definitely a mind fuck in one of those senses,
Yeah,
It's a great show.
absolutely. Absolutely. And it's not outrageous. It's like very, because, the characters in the show that are the serial killers are based off of the real serial killers.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, fiction meets nonfiction. And, but the acting in the show and the way that they set everything up, it's very realistic. It's not like, hyperbole or over the top. It's actually something that you'll enjoy watching, even if you already know the serial killer story.
I could be mistaken, but I do think they have Manson on season 2, or the story of Manson on season 2.
Wow, that's interesting. That would be, yeah, I got to get on and check that out.
Yeah, you have time. Yeah, we have nothing but time. So what is your number 3?
Okay, man. My number 3 show, for this show to be number 3 on my list, it speaks really highly about these 2 shows in front of it in terms of the effects they had on me, because these next 3 shows, I absolutely adore them, and they all make me just fall on the ground laughing.
Oh, cool.
Like
Okay.
laughing so hard that like organs feel like they're gonna shut down. Like I love to laugh like in a hysterical level. And this show, at least as far as I'm concerned, is kind of a sneaky show because a lot of people don't know about it. Although it has returned and it is on Netflix, to my knowledge, currently. I don't know if they're making new episodes, but they rebooted it on Netflix. It premiered in 1988.
Oh.
And it ran for 12 seasons before it was rebooted and brought back on Netflix, I think a few years ago. The show is called Mystery Science Theater 3000.
What? Weird. Okay.
Have you ever
Never.
You've never heard of it?
No.
Okay. Please.
Mystery.
And Mystery Science Theater 3000. And let me tell you, anybody who's listening to this, please, if you haven't seen this show, please just do yourself a favor and try it out. It is so fucking hilarious. It is the perfect show to like watch with like a close friend that you just love to laugh with. The premise of the show is this. It is literally there's a man, there's a robot named Crow, and then there's another robot that looks like a bird named Tom Servo. Okay. The budget for the original show must have been like negative. Like it was bad.
Yeah.
But it's such a great idea. And so they're on this show. They're on the spaceship like prisoners. And then there's this evil lady who's like trying to win like the evil lady of the year prize. Like she's trying to like become like the most popular evil person. And her whole job is to show them movies that will torture them.
Oh, no.
So, like, they have to watch old movies and shitty movies and old, love movies and stuff that was, like, some of the worst films of all time. But what you see as someone who's watching the show is you see the old movie playing, and then you see Crow, the male character, which they've had 3 of them over the years, and then Tom Servo sitting next to each other with theater seats and the I think it's the foreground or the back, I can't remember, but you see their shadows, and they're basically all they're doing is commenting and making fun of the movie the whole time.
Really?
So it is just like sitting there with 3 of your best friends that are just cracking the funniest freaking jokes, like the funniest shit, and like just stuff that you don't expect, just like you would do with your friend if you were watching a crappy movie. All of a sudden you start cracking on the movie or whatever. That is literally the entire show, with a couple of segments in between where they like talk about the movie and they make a joke which shows them back on the ship, like they're taking a break. Mm. And it is hilarious. It is, I think it's a show that, it's intelligent comedy because you really have to pay attention, and you're sitting there and you're watching, and it's unpredictable because at any point they could say something just totally off the wall and hilarious. I mean, you can watch that show with kids because there's no cussing or anything, or
Wow.
but it was on network TV for a while, like on the kind of like the indie channels. But I used to watch it as a kid, and I every time I watch it, I die laughing. I watched a couple episodes with Emily uh, a few weeks ago, and we were just dying. We were just falling on the floor dying. And it's funny because you'll laugh so hard that like you literally will miss like the next minute of the show because you're just laughing
Oh,
like hysterically.
that is great.
Yeah, great show.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. I have it pulled up right now, and I will definitely be taking a look at it. Yeah, that
Yes.
I mean that technique of having the empty seat or the blacked out seats in the front watching the movie. Did that originate with this show, or has that been something?
I can't say for sure, but all I know is like I always kind of wanted to recreate it since I was in high school. Like I thought it would be fun to like do something like that,
Oh,
watch a movie with a friend and just crack on the movie the whole time because I just loved it. It's addicting show to watch.
yeah.
Like I it's my sister introduced it to me, and I think I started watching it like in my early like teens, but I loved it. Really great show.
Yeah, it's funny. It says forced by evil scientists to watch bad B movies until he breaks. A host and a bunch of captive robots comment on the films to keep sane. That's funny. It's actually a really funny. So, do they kind of comment on fake films like created for the show or real films?
No, literal
Oh
films like
wow.
Godzilla, like the old Godzilla movies. Or there was one that I watched the other day, and it was called like The Lady in Gold Boots. So it was like this terribly shitty movie, and it was like an old like love movie about a girl that goes to LA to dance. And I mean, so the movie, you would never watch it. You would literally never pay attention to that movie. But because it's on Mystery Science Theater and you know that they're going to crack jokes about it, you become enthralled in like watching the actual crappy movie and enjoying the comedic process that goes on with it. And it's a really fun experience. And you're watching a whole movie, so it's basically like an hour and a half, an hour and 10 minute show. It's really good.
Mm. Yeah, especially since it's a comedy. That's going to be something that I need to watch. As you can tell, my entire list is all drama.
Oh yeah, and it's even better when you watch it with someone else. It's one of those shows where when you watch it with someone and they got a sense of humor,
Yes.
like you're just gonna laugh off of each other's laughs like nonstop.
Gosh. And then we need to rewind just to catch up to, yeah, be fun. Gosh. Okay. So for my number two, it's tough, man. There's so many that I want to put up there, but
Hmm.
what sucks is that there are two great shows that I would have had in this position, but they were canceled. And so I figured that
Oh
also they were
wow.
canceled two two seasons in. One was canceled halfway in its second season, and the other one was canceled right after its second season.
Wow.
Um, and so I'm kind of my number two is a show that just came out, I think, with its third season. It's also a Netflix show, and it is Ozark. Have you
Ah,
seen Ozark?
I have, and it's a good
Yeah,
show.
so far. It's very similar to Breaking Bad, to Better Call Saul. Deals with cartel, drug laundering, money, things like that. But it's instead of in Mexico or I don't know, or I guess Albuquerque. That's where Better Call Saul is taking place. It's in the Ozarks, um, which it's a beautiful color tone, quite opposite of Better Call Saul. Better Call Saul is very yellow and orange, hues, and Ozarks are very blue and green. Um, and so it's kind of like takes place in like kind of like a swampy uh, landscape. So it's an interesting tone that it adds.
I think it takes place in Missouri, right? At least the first season does.
I I have no clue. Maybe I should research
Yeah.
all this stuff too before I even
Well,
say.
what's funny is the reason I know that is because I had a friend when I lived in Santa Barbara, and he was in his 80s and he had Netflix, and he told me about the show because he used to be in business, and he said he loved it because he related to it because he used to do business in Missouri, and the
Oh, that's
Ozarks,
it. Yeah.
the Ozarks I believe are in Missouri or partly in Missouri, so I believe the show was or at least set in that
Yeah,
area.
it's they in the first season it's about a regular family. They lived in Chicago and then they were dragged basically to Missouri Ozarks. And it has Jason Bateman, I think is his name.
Yeah,
Um,
Arrested Development.
yeah,
He was
Jason.
on that show.
Yeah, it's just a great show. There's a character Darlene, and played by Lisa Emery, and it's a great. Again, it's one of those shows where every episode feels like a season finale in terms of its intenseness and in terms of where it leaves off, and it just really had me on the edge of my seat.
Yeah, I noticed that with a lot of like these shows now, where they're like they always leave you hanging.
Well, this is
So it's like Breaking Bad. I remember 24 was like that, where at the end of the episode they're like, "Oh, gotta watch the next one."
yeah, and the thing that sucked about that time was that you really did have to wait until the next one.
Right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
but that's one thing that I hope Netflix never changes, and I hope Netflix will forever remain the binge streaming service. I think a lot of other ones, I know for sure Disney Plus, like for example, The Mandalorian, they release episode at a time. Apple, in their morning show, they released episode at a time. And I think that really hurts the show. I think when the show should be released, release the entire series at once, because people are going to watch it all. At least, some people will binge it all in one day, but it's majority will watch it within a few days. I'm pretty
Right.
sure. But
Yeah, it's just nice to be able to have the access. I think that companies that are, and I understand why they would do it. They're like, hey, we're going to release the show week in and week out so that way you can watch our other shows and actually stay on and continue your subscription. But, I think that this generation of viewership, the people that are coming up, they want it now. Like you said, like they
absolutely.
want to be respected and have access to stuff that they can watch and not have to be, basically play the game of waiting a week for an episode just for a formality.
Yeah. Well, it's just the environment that we've grown up in. And I mean, in terms of we could flip on or YouTube, and anything is there for us to watch immediately. And so I think, our attention spans have gotten a lot lower too. I think, and that's why I think the reason these shows are kind of successful. I mean, Ozark is trending, I think, number 2 right now in the U.S. on Netflix. They go by that model that every scene has a purpose, and even though they're able to weave in character development, it has to just be drama and tension that really lead us through the story and keep the audience engaged.
Right.
Yeah, and so really good show. I highly recommend uh, anyone and everyone to watch, especially if you liked Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad.
Hmm.
Yeah, any kind of gang
Yeah. So
related.
are all three? Correct me if I'm wrong. Are the first three shows you listed all streaming on streaming services?
So far, all of them. I had
Yeah,
mentioned.
because that's what I was thinking at first. It's
Well,
kind of funny how like we're so different with our age.
yeah. Well, Better Call Saul.
Because
Better Call Saul is actually AMC. That one's,
oh, okay,
but you could stream it. Especially if you have Xfinity. My parents have Xfinity, and so I'm able to log in like to AMC Go and watch it, streaming,
right.
anywhere. But yeah, I think it's a great time to be entering the film market in the world. To be working. Just so many platforms and a lot of work. Um,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And a lot more, or you would hope a lot less nepotism and a lot less Harvey Weinsteins of the world making you drop your pants to be in a TV show.
yeah,
Jesus, Jesus Christ, man.
yeah, gee. Ain't
Yeah.
nobody want to see that anyway.
Well, number two for me. Are you ready for
I'm
it?
ready.
All righty. All right. This show, I mean, it's a show that was super inappropriate for its time, and I think it was a trailblazing show because it was like, you know, the end of the '80s, early '90s, super duper inappropriate, super sexist. A lot of people would say, but I would disagree, and I'll say why in a minute. But the show premiered in 1987 and it ran 11 seasons, and it had a huge impact on my life comedically because I just think it's so damn funny, this show. And the show is Married with Children.
Ah, I think was that the one I was thinking of?
Al Bundy. Yeah, Al Bundy, Peggy, Kelly, and Bud Bundy. So, you know, the show, here's my thing about the show. And I think it depends on who you talk to, because I've talked to different people, and most of the guys I talk to love the show that are around my age.
Oh,
And then there's women that I've talked to that are like, nah, you know, it wasn't for me. There's a lot of, sex and objectifying of women, which is very true, and I do understand why people might not like it.
mm,
But at the same time, the show is just it's a joke. It's an absolute joke. Al Bundy is constantly made to be a loser on the show. Like, he's not like the guy you want to be. He's the guy you want to avoid being. He's a shoe salesman. He's always unhappy. He rarely wins in any situation, and when he does win, it's short-lived, or it's something that's like a minuscule victory. And like any good show of the time, like, it was edgy, the comedy, the writing was super good. Peggy and Al with their back and forth, Callie and Bud with their back and forth, Al and Marcy, his neighbor, with the back and forth, Jefferson, Marcy's husband, who was a goofball, all the ancillary characters that would come on the show, the cameos, the storylines. I mean, it just speaks. And it was also another show that was set in Chicago, which is interesting, a Midwestern family. But it just was one of those shows that, like, you could totally relate to the fact that things were just so, like, goofy, and like the family, it was just, I think it was on the edge of like over too much, but it was still more real than the shows that we were watching in the '80s, where the families always solved the problems,
mm,
the families always kind of came out on top. There was good things and life lessons to be learned. Like, Al Bundy was more like, yeah, this is my life. Shit, I got to deal with
yeah,
it.
a bit closer to
And
reality for most of the audience watching it.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the other thing was they went through so much stuff. There was always, crap going on, but at the end of the day, they were always together. They were always on the couch together. They were, and so I think it just made so many jokes about marriage, and between, siblings, and pop culture, and the difference between sexes and races, and it just went to a place where no show was going, at least shows that I was watching at the time. And for me, because of that, because it opened the doors to shows like Martin, and other shows that were, just kind of out there and wacky.
Hmm.
um I love it, and that's why I made my top 5 list.
Dang. Well, what a great show. Yeah, I remember um, not watching the show, but seeing a clip of a scene where he was making fun of a woman in her shoe size, right? Do you ever?
Right.
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
there there are literally like 15-minute long videos on YouTube of like Al Bundy insults, and the one that I always remember was because, again, he made fun of everybody. There was people that were overweight. It was this, it was that, and like I said, I totally get how in the PC worlds people might not like that show, but again, it was a comedy. It was a joke. He was written off. He was a loser on the show,
Hmm.
so it wasn't like he was winning or anything like that. And so, but the joke that I remember is there was an overweight lady in the shoe store, and she's trying to get like these small these small pair of shoes, and she's got a huge foot. And Al looks at her and he's like, well, why don't we try, a bigger size, and then she makes a comment, and then he makes a comment. And then she goes, look, you don't want to get on my bad side. And Al looks at her and says, I'd get on your bad side, but I only got a half a tank of gas. So it's like, that's just the example of like the wackiness and the craziness. I mean, there's an episode that makes fun of husbands where, all the guys are on the roof trying to put up the Christmas lights,
Uh-huh.
and they just keep taking turns fucking up and falling off the roof, like, and they're like just constantly falling off the roof, and they use like dummies to throw off the roof, so it's like this lifeless body landing on the concrete,
Jeez.
and it's just so funny, man. It was just such an inappropriate and funny show. I couldn't get enough of it as a kid.
Yeah, that sounds funny. It always reminded me of that character. Reminded me of my mom's ex. If you remember him.
The doofus, the jerk.
Yeah, doofus.
Yeah. Fuck that guy.
I know. I know. That he who should not be named. He doesn't even deserve it. But before naming my number one, there was a lot of shows that I wanted to give a shout out, an honorable mention, because they were just so good. They should be mentioned. So I don't know if you have seen the mini series The Sinner.
No, I haven't.
I highly recommend that one. Every series, so there's 3 seasons right now. Every season is different, completely different story. Follows the same detective all through them. So again, another detective show, but really, really good show that I recommend. HBO had a mini series mini series. It was just 1 season of called Chernobyl. I don't know if you've heard about that.
Oh,
Seen it?
man. That was a great show. Great show.
Damn.
Thank you for mentioning that show.
Yeah, that was a great show. And then there's another 2 that I wanted to mention. They were both canceled, though. And so I don't know if you remember the show called True Calling.
That sounds very familiar, but I don't think I watched it.
True Calling was it had Eliza Dushku in it, and it ran from 2003 to 2015. And it was about this woman who she worked in a morgue, and these people would come back to life, and they would, like, right before she's about to put their ass in the drawer and close the lid forever, they like come back to life and they say, "Help me." And her day rewinds, basically. She goes back to the beginning of her day, and she investigates, basically attempting to stop the death of this person before it happens. And so,
you know what? She was on that one movie. I think it was Bring It On, right?
Yes,
the cheerleader movie.
I had such a huge crush on her.
I did too, and she was so beautiful. And you know what? I seen an interview or a few interviews with her after her career, because she hasn't done a whole lot of stuff lately.
Mm-hmm.
Super nice person.
Yeah.
Like super. I was just like, wow, what a super cool person. Like, it's actually nice to like see someone who was that famous, because she was pretty famous at a point in time, to be as cool as she was. So I was a huge fan of her when she was on.
Another show that she was in, called Dollhouse.
Oh,
I don't know if you remember. It was on Fox, and it was created by Joss Whedon. I don't know if he's done some comic book movies, I think. I should know that for sure. He did he did some movies in the MCU. But Dollhouse, it was a great show, where basically they had multiple and it was a great show if you were an actor, especially, like, damn, because basically you're a clean slate of a person, and you're basically used for assignments. And so you could be a blank slate, and then they could assign you this job where you're a financial advisor, for example, and they upload this consciousness to you, and you're instantly this person. And it was such an incredible role, I would say, for being an actor, because the same actor would portray multiple different personalities and personas just in even a single episode. It was insanely cool. Really great show. It only lasted for 2 seasons, which is really unfortunate. It had potential, I think, to go far. Mm-hmm. So another show, Legend of Korra. It's kind of a so Stranger Things, Netflix.
Right,
great show. Yeah.
I thought, Stranger Things, I loved the first season, but I thought it was kind of like went down a little.
Yeah, that's why it wasn't in the top.
Yeah.
And even this next one, The Simpsons, I think it was seasons 1 through 6 or something, is considered the golden age of The Simpsons. Mm-hmm. And then my next one, SpongeBob, classic season, like 1 through 3 or 1 through 2. Every episode classic.
I actually went to the same college as the creator of SpongeBob,
Oh, really?
Humboldt State University. Shout out to
Hey,
the Lumberjacks.
hey, nice. And then my last honorable mention, Dexter.
Ah, good show.
Yeah. And so that leads me to my number one, which is Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Ah, a lot of people like that
Oh,
show.
it is so good, dude. Okay, so I'm not an anime fan. It's not really anime. Uh, it's animated. Um, and it is so good. It has 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, and it has
Wow.
9.2 on IMDb. Um, it's an incredible show. So it lasted from 2005 to 2008, and so I was 11 when it started. Um, and shit, I can't do math. And then I was like 16. No. And then I was like 14 or however. 3 years later. 3 years later, it stopped. But great show. It obviously didn't teach math, but it was a great show in terms of character development. And I mean, there's so many people that do like film essays out on YouTube. I don't need to go in depth that they do, because I mean, just check out their videos. They're great. But I mean, just the show from where it starts to where it ends, it's such a growth of a show. The animation still holds up. It's so great. The premise of it was so original. I've never seen anything like it. Still haven't, right? I mean, besides its sequel, The Legend of Korra, which is on my honorable mention. But I mean, you got to stick with the classics. This one was incredible. The film, yeah, shouldn't even be, shouldn't exist. But you know, the bend, you know, the ability that they have. So basically, for those that don't know, the logline of the show here is the world is divided into 4 nations: the Water Tribe, the Earth Kingdom, the Fire Nation, and the Air Nomads. And they're all inspired off of actual, like the Air Nomads are based off of monks that live in the Tibetan mountains or something like that. Like they have origins for all of the like the Water Tribe has an origin. The Earth King, the Fire Nation apparently is Japan. They said, but anyway, so they say each represented by a natural element for which the nation is named. Benders have the ability to control and manipulate the element from their nation, and so Water Tribe, for example, they live. For example, if it was here on Earth, they lived in Antarctica, and the other one. The Arctic, you know, because we have two, don't we? We have one in the North, one in the South. They live in the North Pole and the South Pole. Shit. So imagine they live in the North Pole and the South Pole.
One Santa Claus,
Santa Claus
and the
shit.
other is reverse Santa Claus.
So it's just, yeah. So I mean, they're surrounded by water basically, and they're able to manipulate it. So it's just a great show. So the Avatar is someone in the show who's able to control all 4 elements. They're able to airbend, they're able to earthbend and firebend and all of that. And that's specific only to someone who is the Avatar. And it's just an incredible premise that it's like it deals with reincarnation, and it's just a lot of deep themes for a kid's show.
Right, yeah,
You
that's a
know,
lot of those shows like that are that way.
yeah, and so just a great show that I would really recommend. For you don't have to be a kid or, you know, even a fan of animation to watch it. I think if you could look past that, just try to, you know, view it for the story, it'll be great. And I do think there is a live action remake of it on Netflix, not currently, but in the mix. in the
Oh,
yeah, with the original creators attached, and
interesting.
that's what went wrong with the film, is that the original creators didn't have too much control over it, and
I see.
that was very obvious. Yeah, it's unfortunate. I always dreamed as a kid, even wanting to make the movie of this, because it was such a, even at that age, an impactful film. And it was one of those that I think it would come out on the weekend at a certain time, and I'm like, I'm watching it. It's like, don't bother me. So, yeah, it's a great show. I don't own it on DVD or anything. I wish I did. The shows that I actually do own on DVD are True Calling and Dollhouse, the two that I mentioned. But yeah, Avatar: The Last Airbender is my number one, and I need to get it before the end of the world happens. But yeah. So you're number one.
All right. Well, like yourself, I will go through some honorable mentions really quick. And I'm so glad that you mentioned Chernobyl, because anybody who's listening to this and hasn't seen Chernobyl, you need to watch that show.
Yes.
I didn't even think of that show when I was making this list, but you brought it up and I said, holy crap, that'll be number 6. Forget it.
Oh wow.
But if you actually dig deep into that show, like, and how detail oriented the people that put that show together were, even in how the actors look compared to the real life story. I mean, it is basically a recreation of the real life story of the people that were involved and the circumstances that led to, and the things that happened during the meltdown at Chernobyl. It is absolutely amazing. It is fantastic. Anyone who who hasn't seen that, you just have to watch it. It's super intense as well.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad that you mentioned that. For me, some of my honorable mentions is Seinfeld, a show about nothing that was hilarious and lasted forever. A show that impacted me as a teenager, Boy Meets World. I thought it was a really popular show. Me and my teenage friends were into that. Unsolved Mysteries, you mentioned that. I think that's just an iconic show because we're always been fascinated with mysteries, and the music itself did it for me.
Yeah.
The Simpsons, which you mentioned, I think that The Simpsons was an amazing show that has kind of gone to shit.
Yeah.
And it's
Unfortunately.
so sad because it's a show that it makes Fox a bajillion dollars, and I understand why they want to keep it going, but you know some of the stuff they did at certain points, it turned me off. And I was a huge fan. And I'm not stuck up about animated shows. I actually enjoy animated shows very much, but Simpsons has changed. Another show that was sneaky good, and one of the reasons I love the show is because I respect the person who put it together in terms of their work ethic. I'm not as big a fan of the guy now, but the Colbert Report.
Oh.
That show was so damn funny, and it was on, I think, like 4 days a week.
Wow.
And he did that thing, I think, pretty much live. Like, I mean, they had a camera in front of him, and he ran through the show. And I mean, there are some of the funniest, some of my biggest laugh out loud moments were from watching that show. And it was a spinoff of The Daily Show with Jon Stewart,
Oh.
which on Comedy Central was super funny. But Jon Stewart wasn't playing a character. Jon Stewart was he's a liberal. He thinks a certain way, and he says his feelings that way. The Colbert Report was the opposite because Stephen Colbert is very liberal minded, but he was playing a character that was a Republican, basically, or a Republican sympathizer. And he did it for years and years and years. And he was just so damn funny and so damn good. And it was at the perfect time because it was during the Bush administration that his show became so popular. So I have to give a shout out to that show. And then the last show is a classic. And I think it was so funny and so iconic, was I Love Lucy. It's just a show I definitely have to give a shout out to. So, and the last thing I want to say is I didn't choose this next show that I'm about to say, and because there was only one season of it that I liked, but it's an HBO show. And if you're gonna watch a show, if you're just gonna watch one season of a show, you need to watch True Detective season 1.
Interesting. Really?
yeah. Matthew McConaughey, Woody Harrelson, amazing, amazing show. The first season is the best television you'll ever watch in terms of acting. It's fantastic. I loved it. I'm still in love with it, and I would watch it over and over again on a loop if I could. The problem is when they put that show together, True Detective, they made it as every season is its own story, and then the next season will be with new actors. And
Ah,
season two sucks, and season three was like whatever. But season one, oh my god,
really?
amazing season, a must watch. To me, my absolute favorite season of TV of all time.
Wow.
Way better than Game of Thrones, way better than Breaking Bad. That one season is fantastic.
True Detective. Okay.
So,
I'll definitely
so
check
with
that out.
that, oh, absolutely, please do. So, with that said, my number one show is also an animated show,
Ooh,
and it's one of the funniest shows that I've ever watched. And it to me,
it's Kimba?
this show,
No. No.
it's one of those shows that it is literally a timeline of history from 1997 to today. It's gone for 22 seasons
Ah,
and it's still going strong. And what's hilarious about this show is the first time I saw someone wearing a t-shirt of one of the characters on the show, I was like, what the fuck is that? Like, who's this loser wearing this, chubby, looking cartoon on his shirt? That is South Park.
yes.
To me, the greatest show of all time. And here's why.
Wow.
It's a super inappropriate show. It is super wrong. There's all kinds of crazy shit being said or done in that show. However, we live in a country where we have the freedom of speech. We have the freedom of expression. And no show, in my opinion, encapsulates that more than South Park. Because South Park goes after everybody.
Amen.
Every famous person, every politician, every set of circumstances, every controversial topic. And it's a comedy and it makes fun of it. And sometimes every once in a while you actually get like a neat little message out of it. But iconic show with kids, just like The Simpsons, kids that have never aged,
Yeah.
because you could do that with
Yeah.
cartoons. And the other thing about South Park is it stayed true, relatively true to what it was. It hasn't gone off the rails, and the same creators that made it are still doing most of the voices and a lot of the stuff on the show, and the same formula that made it great 10 years ago, it still exists today. And for that, South Park is to me the all-time greatest show. And it made Comedy Central. I mean, and I know it just sold to Hulu within the last few years. I think they sold it for like $500 million, the
Damn.
rights
Damn.
just to air. Yeah, Hulu paid like $500 million just to have the rights to air it. Old episodes. So huge fan. Love it, and that's my number one of all time.
Your list is America's list, pretty much.
Well, I'm 35 years old, and the shows, of course, anything you're going to put on a top five list, yourself included, it's gonna have spoken to you because you saw it.
For sure.
And so, like a show like Family Matters, for example, like you didn't grow up with that show as a part of your life, where I may have, like you, like The Last Airbender, I was older at the time. I was already in college. I missed the boat. So it's one of those things where it's actually kind of fun to share with each other,
Very true.
and say, oh, I feel like we're learning. It would kind of be neat. You talk to someone that's 50 or 60 and say, what were your top five favorite shows of all time? They might have a Gilligan's Island. That's where. But this was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed going through this list with you.
Yeah, thanks for coming on and doing it. And for my listeners, again, we went over our top 5 favorite films over on your podcast called Hey Dédalo, and it's available across all platforms. Did you want to mention anything before we?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's the Hey Dédalo podcast. It's on iTunes, Spotify, and Anchor. I have a YouTube channel, Hey Dédalo, and you can also find me on Instagram or Twitter at Hey Dédalo, and that's HeyDedalo.
Hell yeah. Cool, man. Well, again, thank you, Bro Dad, for coming on and for talking about our top 5 favorite shows and for just sharing a little bit of knowledge with I think 5 or 6 of my listeners. No, no, but yeah, this is great. These are great shows that I recommend getting out there and watching. Most of mine, I think, are available to stream. That I mentioned, you could stream on them. But yeah, if you can,
in mine, you can find in a cave in Wyoming.
at the thrift store, you could find them. No,